Foresta. The Deal with the Devil, Eternal Temptation. On the outskirts of the small American town of Lockwood, there stood a decrepit mansion that many locals deemed cursed. Its crumbling walls and dark windows loomed like ominous, vacant eyes, instilling fear in anyone who dared to approach. It was said that within those walls lived a gifted musician named Jonathan Rivers, who had once struck a deal with the devil. He traded his soul for eternal fame, but ultimately lost everything dear to him. Chapter 1. Dark Thoughts. Jonathan's story began not so long ago. Born into a poor family, he grew up in a place where despair and hopelessness were a way of life. Each day was a mirror of the last, with a small violin as his only solace in loneliness. Jonathan practiced tirelessly, dreaming of the day his music would make the world hold its breath in awe. Yet, despite all his efforts, fame remained elusive. One day, while wandering through an old library, he stumbled upon a peculiar book. The pages were yellowed, and the text was inscribed in a long-forgotten script. It contained tales of making a pact with the devil. As he read, he felt an internal voice whispering possibilities, an offering that could finally grant him the recognition he sought. Someone in the shadows spoke to him. It was the devil, a sly, charming figure promising eternal glory and success in exchange for his soul. In that moment, Jonathan's eyes sparkled with ambition. His dreams, once distant, suddenly seemed within reach. "You want the world to know your name?" the devil said, his voice echoing like a sinister melody. "I can give you that. Just surrender your soul, and you will be immortal." Chapter 2. Immersion in Darkness. Without hesitation, Jonathan accepted the offer, his heart racing with excitement and fear. The devil grinned and sealed the deal with blood. In that instant, Jonathan's soul became a prisoner of darkness, embarking on a path fraught with suffering. His fame arrived swiftly. Audiences filled stadiums, left breathless by his performances, and his name quickly became a legend. But in the midst of this fleeting joy, he failed to notice how he was slowly losing himself. Each concert was both a triumph and a torment. His soul was fraying, while dark thoughts slithered behind him every night. Chapter 3. Impossible Choices. As his fame grew, Jonathan lost those he held dear, friends and family who could not comprehend why he chose darkness over light. Only Katie, his longtime love, continued to search for him among the stars. Sent messages, yet each time he tried to hear her, the sound of her voice pierced his heart like a dagger. One night, returning from yet another concert, he heard her voice, faint and echoing from the void. He turned, but saw no one. A chill gripped his heart. How could he have been so cruel as to leave her behind? Attempting to drown his emotions, he retreated deeper into his dark world, yet memories of Katie refused to fade. Chapter 4. Ghosts of the Past. Rumors about Jonathan grew, and the community became divided. Some praised his genius, while others whispered that he was cursed, and his success was merely the result of unholy dealings. Each night when he closed his eyes, the ghosts of those he had lost began to visit him as visions, calling out in sorrow. One chilling night, in the height of his terror, he awoke in a paralyzed state. Facing the mirror, he saw a half-human figure staring back, a being with black eyes and a void where a soul once resided. Tears streamed down his face as he realized that retribution had arrived, and the devil likely rejoiced. Chapter 5. Nightmares. After this incident, he began to avoid people, fully immersing himself in music. He sought comfort in the sound of his violin, but each note came with the whisper of the devil waiting at his back. The music that was once his source of joy now haunted him like a specter lurking in the darkness. One day, he discovered a mysterious score, its strange notes causing his soul, long dormant in the shadows, to stir. This composition, as legend had it, could summon the devil to strike a new, more dangerous pact. Chapter 6: Meeting the Devil. The next morning, Jonathan made his decision. He wanted to confront the devil again, seeking liberation for his soul. He knew he must face the darkness, and he was resolved to gather all his courage. As the evening moon rose high in the sky, he returned to the forsaken house, filled with determination and dread. The doors creaked open, and a chill filled the air as he entered. The dark corners seemed like deep abysses, ready to swallow him whole. He soon spotted the silhouette standing in the shadows. The devil was there, wearing a grin, with eyes gleaming with a terrible light. "You've come back, Jonathan? Wonderful. How glad I am to see you. Are you ready to make a new choice?" The devil crooned, his voice resonating like music laced with deceit. Chapter 7: Bargaining in the Shadows. Jonathan fought to suppress the fear rising in his chest and gathered his resolve. "I want my soul back," he stated firmly. The devil laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the room. "You don't understand. Once you surrendered your soul, you became part of this world. You sacrificed your happiness for fleeting fame. If you want your soul back, you must pay an even higher price." In that moment, Jonathan thought of Katie. He believed that perhaps he could restore all he had lost if he sacrificed the last remaining drops of happiness within him. "I am willing to pay," he declared, but the words felt like stones lodged in his throat. The devil snapped his fingers, and a sinister tune filled the space. Ghostly whispers crawled around him, each one a reminder of his losses, a manifestation of his exhausted soul. Chapter 8: Last Chance. As he felt his soul attempting to escape, Jonathan began to play his violin. With every note, he summoned light, beseeching the darkness. The music illuminated his heart, and he could see the devil tremble as he began to lose his power. "Your music is mine," the devil declared, trying to regain control. "You will never escape me." But Jonathan, sensing strength rising within him, poured his essence into each note, awakening sounds he had never heard before. They were like the cries of the dead, calling for justice. Chapter 9: Darkness versus Light. The dark shadows gathered around him, and Jonathan could see them starting to manifest. Katie, his family, all those who had suffered because of his choices. Their eyes brimmed with tears, and their hearts, filled with anticipation, beckoned him. Finally, he caught Katie's gaze. She stared at him, fear evident, yet hope flickered in her eyes. "Jonathan, don't let the darkness take your soul," she cried out. That gave him strength, and he continued to play, lifting the melody towards the heavens. The music became so powerful that soon a radiant aura enveloped him, repelling the darkness. Chapter 10: Conflict and Redemption. The devil began to lose control. With each chord resonating from Jonathan's violin, the grip of true dominion slipped away. Jonathan realized he had to finish the fight. His music, filled with emotion and intensity, became his final blow. "I am returning to life," he shouted, and unleashed the entirety of his musical power at the devil. Suddenly, the darkness began to fade. Jonathan, filled with energy and resolve, fought on as the light consumed everything around him. The devil's laughter morphed into fright and ultimately vanished, leaving nothing but echoes of malevolent glee in the air. Chapter 11. A New Life. Daylight broke as Jonathan emerged from the oppressive mansion. He felt all his past suffering remained trapped in the shadows. Now he was free. Despite guilt gnawing at him, he understood that facing his pain was part of his journey. His first instinct was to seek Katie, hoping she hadn't vanished forever. When he found her, his heart pulsed with happiness and hope. Emotions surged over him like a tidal wave. "Katie, I found you," Jonathan exclaimed, enveloping her in his embrace. "Where have you been?" she asked, tears welling in her eyes. "I waited for your return every day." In that moment, as their hands met, he realized, despite all temptations and darkness, love was the greatest force. His soul had found its home. Chapter 12. Lessons from the Past. In the years that followed, Jonathan learned to approach his music with newfound understanding and wisdom. He ceased to exploit it for profit, recognizing that his true purpose was to share it with others. He opened workshops, inspiring children, and hoping they would never be tempted by the dark side that had ensnared him once. Yet the shadow of the devil remained etched in his memory, a constant warning. Jonathan knew that the battle against evil was an endless struggle, and armed with music imbued with light and hope, he prepared himself for any challenges that might arise. Conclusion. The Light of Hope. Jonathan's story is not merely a high-stakes tale. It is a cautionary narrative about how easy it is to lose oneself, as well as the true power of love and music. As he battled temptations, these lessons served as reminders that even in the darkest night, the light of hope never fades. Now, when he played his violin, each sound awakened both chills of fear and joy in the hearts of those who listened, breathing life into their dreams and aspirations. For Jonathan, the harmony between light and darkness was more than just a legend. It was a part of his life, his new musical destiny. Black Digger. Part 1. The Embodiment of Nightmares. Edward, like many black diggers, ventured into unexplored places in search of forgotten treasures. This passion enveloped him gently as he discovered medals, old weapons, or personal belongings of soldiers lost to time. Each artifact became for him not just an object, but a fragment of history that whispered its dark and unforgettable tales. However, what awaited him at Height 205 would change his life forever. When he first laid eyes on the mountain, covered in woods and shadows, his heart raced. Suddenly, a feeling of foreboding washed over him. This is not just a site for excavations, he thought. But ignoring his intuition, he set up his tent, lit a fire, and took up his shovel, filled with eagerness for adventure. Every day, as he delved deeper into the forest, Edward forgot about time and himself. The sun burned overhead, its heat clinging to his skin, but excitement only fueled his fire. He knew that fierce battles had raged here in 1941. Thousands of lives were lost, and now their remains lay buried in this land. On the third evening, as twilight enveloped his camp, he heard them for the first time. They were whispers at first, feeble, and then increasingly urgent, like Egyptian mummies calling out to him from their dust. Nothing special, Edward told himself, reaching for a bottle of whiskey. But by midweek, the whispers transformed. Now he discerned words floating through the air, wrapping around him like a cold rain. The faint voices became more distinct. You, ours, you, or He tried to ignore them, but it was difficult. Feeling out of place, he approached the edge of a small lake, where weeds floated like ghosts. And again, those voices. Long ago, Earth, you, ours. Edward recalled those who had perished here, the lost lives. Initial excitement morphed into anxiety. What did they want from him? He had never been a believer in the supernatural, but now every rustle seemed to be an evil that would not let him be. Part 2. A Night of Fears. As each day passed, tension mounted. On the 5th day, exhausted and worn out, Edward began to hear even more. In the evening, when the stars started to twinkle in the sky, his hearing filled with images of two girls who seemed to peer out from the shadows of the trees. "You are not alone here," one of the voices whispered, and Edward felt as though he had been pushed away from reality. "He has 5 minutes left to live," he heard from behind the trees, and he broke into a cold sweat from fear. "Well, step aside," whispered another, almost as if with an order, while the wind rustled through the leaves, playing with the tension in the air. Covered in cold sweat, Edward crawled out of the trench. Looking up, he noticed the trees swaying violently, and suddenly a piercing beep rang out, as if the earth itself was warning him. His nerves finally gave way. "What do you want from me?" he shouted, gazing at the surrounding forest. Each echo of his voice threatened to reply. No one responded. The whispers surged to a crescendo in his mind. He made his way back to camp when suddenly, an explosion. Part 3. Ghosts in the Dark. Edward barely had time to take cover when a landmine erupted, unleashing a fireball that soared upward, engulfing the silence. The sounds of flight and the thunderous impact created a burst of astonishment, making him contemplate his life. His entire world was turned upside down. The ground trembled, and Edward gasped for breath amid smoke and dust. In horror, he collapsed to his knees. His mouth was agape, but still, there were no whispers. He was alone, on the other side of fear. Shivering, he tried to convince himself that this was all just a trick of his mind. The next day, while digging in another spot, he stumbled upon something shocking. The remnants of the two girls. Debris from a medic who had lost her life in the depths of the war, and a soldier who had fought bravely for her last breath. A chill ran down his spine. Within him, fragments of memories surfaced, drowning all thoughts. Gazing at the remains, he caught their remarkable presence in those days. He couldn't understand how he could speak out loud about their lives and deaths, but the memories swelled upon him like waves in a stormy sea. Part 4. An Unfathomable Awakening. The final night arrived. Edward was asleep, but his dreams were worse than reality. The two girls, one with a medic bag and the other with a rifle, continued to appear to him. They stood before him, smiling, beckoning him closer, but something in their eyes was dark and frightening. He understood that they had saved him. But why? "Why can't you leave me alone?" he cried out in his dream, but this only fueled their steely smiles. The next morning, Edward returned to town and, to his surprise, noticed a few strands of gray hair in the mirror. He couldn't remember how old he was, but the feeling of loss never left him. For the first time in his life, he went to church, sincerely praying for the souls of those who had departed. Candles burned, and he felt warmth rising in his heart, even with the darkness lingering. Finally, a week later, he returned to the same place, placing a colorful ribbon and a few chocolates on the spot where the girls' remains lay. They would like this, he thought as he departed the area. But the whispers were still in his ears. When Edward turned around for the last time, He caught their gazes, filled with sorrow and hope. They were still with him. Their voices no longer frightened him. They were whispers of peace. Edward knew he could never forget them or the pain they had endured. He had become the guardian of their story, an explorer of their memory. They were no longer just remains. They were living witnesses that would forever remain in his consciousness.